Hey guys, this is Solution Podfic, and today we're going to be reading Raising Bats 101 by Miss Gitka. The summary is, Bruce has been acting strange lately. He's being much nicer than anyone is used to. The kids have been investigating it tirelessly. Dick thinks he's possessed. Jason thinks it's cancer. Tim and Duke think he's having another kid. Little do they know, the truth lies in a recently acquired parenting book. Alright, and without further ado, let's jump right in. Jason was trying to make a quiet exit, box of Alfred cookies in one hand and keys to his bike in the other. He had come for breakfast at the request of Dick, who needed to talk to him about a blood-haven gang operation in the Narrows. With the conversation done, he was trying to sneak out without running into anyone else. As he turned the corner, a chill ran down his spine. That eerie feeling of being watched. He turned back slowly and saw Bruce a few feet away. Shit! He startled at the man, looking at him with a strangely determined expression that set him on guard. Are you leaving already? His voice is even and kind. Yeah? Do you want something? No. I just want to thank you for coming. Bruce spoke, and Jason could hear how forced his calm was. It was very nice seeing you. This was all very worrying to Jason, and he was waiting for Bruce to say something annoying so he could storm off and away from the situation. He just nodded. Bruce took a step forward and placed his hand on Jason's shoulder. He was staring deep into his eyes at this point. Jason wanted to wilt under the stare. It felt awfully similar to the one Bruce got when he was reading a file, trying to wrap his head around every part of it. Get home safe. I love you, he said and squeezed Jason's shoulder just a bit. Jason nodded and hoped he didn't look too confused. Bruce's hand didn't leave his shoulder, and some indecision was clear in his eyes. What is he up to? I'll, text you when I get home? Why the hell had he promised that? It must be Bruce's stare. It was freaking him out. Bruce's eyes lit up, and before Jason could step back, he was lunging forward. Suddenly, Bruce's arms were wrapped around Jason's back in a very tight hug. He made a sign of disbelief. What the hell, old man? Bruce continued to hug him, and Jason started to push away. What's wrong with you? Jason was squirming now, but Bruce had him in a vice grip. I want you to remember that you are loved and appreciated. You are strong and worthy of all the happiness in the world. I am very happy that you decided to come by today. He spoke like he was repeating some memorized speech. Jason was pushing him in earnest now. Let me go! He tried to drop his weight and slide out of the hold, but Bruce just held his weight. Damn Bruce and his obsession with working out. Jason wasn't making any progress, and it felt like Bruce's hands were locked together in a hold. He struggled to get his feet back under him and started stepping on Bruce's toes. It did nothing. Son, you are loved and appreciated. You are strong and worthy of all the happiness in the world. I love you very much. Bruce's voice was even and strong, which pissed Jason off more. Jason was practically foaming at the mouth in anger at this point, and Bruce showed no sign of acquiescing. He leaned forward and bit down on Bruce's shoulder. Jason, we have rules about biting in the house. I know you remember that from when you were little. We should have rules about whatever the hell this is. Jason's voice was practically unintelligible because he still had his teeth in Bruce's shoulder. Jason, you are so very loved and appreciated. You are a strong man who is worthy of happiness. I want to make sure you know that. Some tiny part of Jason's heart warmed at the ridiculousness of the situation. The anger he wanted to feel just wasn't rising to the surface. He sighed and lifted his head, seeing the spit stain left on the shirt. Fine, I get it. I am loved and appreciated. I am strong and worthy of happiness. Bruce squeezed him tight for a moment, then let go. You are. Text me when you get home. Yeah. Jason took a step back and walked to the door. He made quick work of putting on his shoes and lingered for a moment. I, love you too or whatever. He avoided Bruce's eyes when he saw his smile out of the corner of his eye. He slammed the door behind him and got on his bike as fast as possible. I gotta figure out what's up with him. Dick had gotten a warning message from Jason a week earlier that stated, Bruce is up to something. He is acting all clingy. This was worrisome because Dick had already had to put his foot down at least once a month due to Bruce's overstepping. So when Dick had to come to the manor to hang out with Damien, he snuck in the back door. He had heavily considered climbing the side of the house, but decided against it. As he slipped through the door connected to the kitchen, he slipped off his shoes. He would have loved to be able to make a quick exit, but it wasn't worth the anger he would receive from Alfred if he tracked dirt into the house. Dick slipped around the corner and was shocked to see Bruce sitting at the counter with a cup of coffee. He looked up and smiled. Hello, Dick. Hi, Bee. Dick was hesitantly walking through the kitchen, trying to keep a casual air to him. There's a fresh pot of coffee if you like any. Bruce looked back at the paper in his hand. No, thank you. Dick was almost to the hallway now when Bruce spoke again. We're having a big roast tonight if you want to stay for dinner. The lack of demand was putting Bruce on edge. This was nothing like the typical Bruce he knew. He slipped to the doorway and stared at the back of Bruce's head for a long moment. Are you going to ask me why I'm here? Bruce turned around to face his son and spoke casually. Do you want to tell me? Bruce scoffed. Not really. Then no. But do let me know if you need anything, son. And with that, Bruce turned back to his paper. Okay. Dick rushed away from the room and up towards the library where he knew Damien would be. There was nothing out of the ordinary in the manner, although when he peeked inside of Bruce's study, there was an extra couch inside. He slammed the library door behind him, and Damien had barely looked up from his sketchbook when Dick was right beside him. What's happening to Bruce? Is he sick or something? Richard, what are you talking about? Father is fine. Damien looked a bit nervous at Dick's suggestion, but rolled his eyes. No, but he's acting so strange. Jason said he was super clingy to him, but to me, he's being super detached. Dick sat down in the seat beside Damien. Father has been completely normal to me, perhaps a bit more talkative than usual. Do you have any other reason to think something is wrong? Damien was acting unbothered, but Dick had been around him enough to read his mood. He was anxious that something could be happening to Bruce. Also likely frustrated he hadn't noticed the changes himself. Dick dropped the topic, regretting that he was reading into things and caused Damien to worry. It's probably nothing. He's just in a good mood all of a sudden. Maybe he and Selena go back together. Damien was worried after Richard had asked him about his father. He decided to sneak into the Batcave the next day in the hopes of getting some time to snoop through his belongings. As he sat down at the desk, he heard footsteps and turned to see Duke walking up to him. Thomas, what are you doing here? Damien's question was cut off when Duke grabbed him and made a shushing motion. Damien started squirming in his arms, but Duke rushed them into a nook and whispered, Be quiet! Bruce and Cass are having an argument and I don't want to get in the middle of it. He's being weird. Damien wanted to speak but heard Cass's voice echo through the cave. I'm strong enough. Let me go. Father was in his pajamas, trailing after Cass. I understand why you feel that way, but going after Shiva right now is dangerous. Cass made some rude gesture and spoke again. You can't stop me. I will go handle her. I have to do it. He responded through gritted teeth. I am not discounting your feelings and opinions on the matter. However, I feel that this is too dangerous for you to do it alone, and I worry how it will affect you. Damien was shocked by his father's lack of yelling. Knowing in any other situation, whoever tried to disobey Batman's orders got lectured and grounded. Cass continued packing a bag, and Bruce followed after her a few steps. Please, Cassandra. I worry about you because I love you. Let me come with you, or bring one of the others. Just don't go alone. Duke looked at Damien pointedly, as they watched Bruce's open communication. Cass sighed. Bruce, I see you're frustrated, but I need to do this. Bruce's sharp inhale could be heard from above. Fine. If you need to go, I will not stop you, but please keep in contact with us. After Cass left, Bruce sat on the chair with a heavy sigh. He did a series of breathing exercises and then opened up the Bat computer to turn on her comms. Batgirl, do you copy? I'm turning on your tracker now and will keep a comm nearby if you need anything. Be safe. Bruce left the cave and the two boys climbed down from their hiding spot. Weird? Duke tried to prompt Damien unsuccessfully. Instead, Damien turned away from Duke and hurried up the stairs to his room to investigate. Dick had sent out a family-wide, minus Bruce and Alfred, text earlier that morning, insisting that everyone needed to come to his apartment in Bloodhaven. That was how Tim found himself piling into a too-small sofa with Duke and Cass on either side of him. On the other seat was Damien, with Dick draped over the arm of it. Babs had her wheelchair parked between the two of them. Finally, Jason and Steph were in chairs they'd pull over from the dining table. Who invited her? Damien pointed at Steph. Jason, Cass, and Tim all raised their hands, glancing around at each other. Barbara was the first to speak. May I ask why we're all here? Jason replied. Bruce has been acting really weird around me. Me too, Dick waved. Cass was next. Me 3. Me 4, Tim spoke next. Father has been quite strange around me as well. Damien spoke. Come on, Brat, we had a whole thing going there, Jason practically whined. Tim didn't know how it was possible, but even Damien's sighs were aggressive. Fine, me 5. Jason pumped his fist at the victory. I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but how has he been acting strange? He's been completely normal around me. Barbara spoke softly, trying to calm the room. Steph nodded along. He's been a little less yelly, but overall the exact same. He hasn't been yelling at any of us. That's what's strange. Dick waved his hands for emphasis. Yeah, he's been all clingy with me, trying to hug me and tell me he loves me, Jason spoke. Complete opposite for me, Dick spoke again. He's been all about respecting my privacy, no demands or anything. Me too, Cass spoke softly, nodding at Dick. Tim chose that moment to interject. And he's been overly attentive to me, overworking himself and not letting me stay up with him. He implemented a bedtime for me. Babs blinked slowly, taking all the information in. She repeated it back to them like she was trying to understand. Saying I love you, giving you space, not yelling, making you go to bed on time, and this is what you needed to call an emergency meeting for? Duke spoke. He's been really focused on building self-esteem for Damien and I. It's freaky. Babs sighed. So just like, good dad stuff? Exactly! Jason, Dick, and Duke all exclaimed at the same time. Tim turned to face Babs, ignoring the jinxes being called out by the three men. You've known Bruce longer than most of us have. Don't you think it's a little strange that he's suddenly acting like a great dad? Fine, it might be a little odd, but don't take it for granted. Babs gave a small smile. Besides, you make it sound like he's evil the rest of the time. Tim spoke. We know he's not evil, he's just very emotionally stunted. It's strange to see him suddenly not. I think something happened to him. Jason pulled himself out of the squabble he, Duke, and Dick were stuck in. Exactly. What if he's dying and he's trying to be a good dad now? Damien sucked in a breath at that, and Dick moved to correct the situation. I don't think he's dying. I think he's been possessed or something. Why else would this happen so suddenly? Tim's brain started to process everything, and he was speaking before the thought had fully formed. Shit, he's having another kid. The room erupted into yelling. Damien. Father would like us to have dinner this Sunday at 6 p.m. Duke. Alfred promised he'd make chocolate cake for dessert. Tim. Oh God, this is it. He's going to tell us he's having a baby. Cass. I've always wanted a sister. Jason. Yeah, but do you want it to be with Bruce's DNA? Damien. Watch what you say, Todd. Dick. I mean, it might be another adoption. God knows he loves adoptions. Duke. I'm not ready to be an older brother. Jason. Me neither. Tim. Question mark, question mark, question mark. Jason. Well, I didn't do a great job with you. Bruce was pleased with himself. All 6 of his children had agreed to come to dinner without any arguments. He was making a lot of progress. He smiled to himself. Only a few weeks earlier, he'd gotten into a blow-up argument with Tim and found himself brooding in the cave, lamenting how terrible a parent he was. He patted himself on the back for being mature enough to buy a parenting book, especially when it was so obvious that it was working. He should have done this years ago. As dinner time approached, he found himself in the kitchen. All his offers to help were being rejected, but he was so happy that he didn't take it personally. Instead, he wandered into the sitting room where Dick and Tim were huddled into a corner whispering. Hello, Bruce greeted with a smile, even as both of them looked him up and down, analyzing him. How have you been, Dick? I haven't had much time to speak with you lately. A little busy with the case, but nothing too serious. Corey's been asking me to take time off, so I might do that soon. Bruce smiled at the thought of Dick's girlfriend taking care of him. That's wonderful. If you two want to use any of the vacation houses, let me know. They've been sitting and collecting dust for too long. Tim was staring at him now. He could feel those bright blue eyes burning a hole in the side of his face. But when he turned to look at Tim, Tim had pasted on an innocent smile. How long till dinner? Bruce tilted his head in question. Alfred said it'll be about 10 minutes. Do you know where the others are? Damien and Duke are in their rooms. Jason's probably in the kitchen of the cave. I don't know about Cass. Alright, thanks then. Bruce left to find Jason, knowing he could get lost in his work and miss dinner. Before he even entered the study, Jason was coming out of the elevator. Oh, perfect. I was just coming to let you know dinner is almost ready. Jason gave an easy smile that had Bruce's heart clenching at the memory of him as a little boy. You think I'd miss Alfred's cooking? No way. Bruce just smiled, walking beside him down to the dining room. When they finally arrived, everyone was already seated, waiting for their arrival. Damien and Tim were caught in an intense whispering argument, while Cass and Dick were discussing their plans for the week. Alfred came through the door at that moment, bringing food to the table. Jason rushed to one of the empty chairs, leaving the head of the table free for him. Bruce took a seat, and everyone stared at him. Please, don't wait on my account. Slowly, conversation began again. Bruce tried not to notice how Damien and Dick were glancing at him every few moments. Jason was loudly humming every few bites, playing it up a bit so Alfred could hear him from the kitchen. Bruce smiled at his actions. Bruce was content to wait out the rest of them, who all seemed ridiculously tense. Finally, Dick broke the silence. So, is Selena joining us tonight? Bruce tried not to make a face at the mention of his former fiancée. No, Selena won't be here tonight. Jason glanced over at Damien before speaking. Is Talia joining us? No. Bruce tried not to notice how all of his children were frantically making eye contact with each other but couldn't hold it back. Why do you ask? Jason just shrugged, so Bruce moved his stare into the next person he thought might crack, Duke. After about a minute of direct eye contact, Duke averted his eyes. We were just wondering if you had an announcement for us tonight. Bruce tried to put the pieces of the story together. You thought I was back with Selena? Or Talia? Dick scratched the back of his neck. Not exactly. We thought you might be having another baby. Bruce raised his eyebrows, but spoke slowly and calmly. No, I'm not having another child. Damien's face started to get red and his brows furrowed, trying to keep something in. The words burst from him suddenly. Are you dying? Todd said you might be dying. Bruce sputtered at that, looking at Jason who just shrugged. He looked back at the youngest. No, Damien, I am not dying. Why on earth would you put that idea in his head? You've been acting weird lately. I thought you might be trying to make your last amends. Jason had the decency to look a little ashamed. Bruce brought his hand to his face, massaging the bridge of his nose. There's nothing going on with me. You haven't yelled at anyone in almost 2 weeks. Dick spoke up. Bruce's heart broke a little at the realization that him being nice made his children think he was dying. I know I'm not always the best father, but I'm just trying to right some wrongs. Maybe I overcorrected and made you all uncomfortable in some way. Tim was the first to speak up. No, it wasn't that. We were just worried about you. Bruce nodded, not quite believing. However, Jason's words were like a shot through the heart. It's just strange, old man. I haven't seen you that nice since before. We're all fucked up and prone to suspicion. Bruce looked around the table and saw gentle smiles all around, trying to comfort him. He smiled to himself about how this had gone from him trying to soothe all of them, to them trying to soothe him. He thought back on the past week and realized he had maybe changed too much too quickly, but he was glad that the confusion was out of the way. Okay, I appreciate your honesty. Now since we're being open, do you have any other suspicions I should clear up before we keep eating? Bruce smiled, making eye contact with everyone at the table. Dick immediately sat up at that offer. Do you and Superman ever bone? The table erupted into chatter, and Dick spoke over all of them. What? He was here all the time when I was little. He used to stay over for days at a time. Everyone quieted and looked at Bruce. He hoped he wasn't blushing. Yes, Clark and I were involved for some time. Both Tim and Damien looked a little ill at the idea, and Bruce assumed it was because of their own relationship with the Kents. Jason spoke next, using sarcastic air quotes. Are you still involved? In the name of honesty, Bruce spoke slowly, putting his hands up. Yes, occasionally. Tim mimed throwing up, and Bruce let out a small laugh. How do you think I was able to give you that Kryptonian sex ed lesson when you and Connell started dating? Tim covered his eyes. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about that. Does anyone else have any other questions they'd like answered? Damien spoke up first. No, I believe I have learned enough today, Father. All right. Well, after dinner, I was hoping we could have a family game night. I bought the Justice League edition of Clue. All around he heard agreements of varying excitement. Soon they broke off into smaller conversations, Dick and Jason arguing over whether or not Superman would have been a better step-parent than Wonder Woman. He didn't bother clarifying that Diana was never an option. Tim and Duke seemed to be talking about a teacher they had. Cass was trying to coax Damien into a conversation about his favorite board games. Bruce leaned back into his chair, pleased that he had been somewhat successful in the end. Alright guys, and that is the end of Raising Bats 101 by Miss Kitka. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you next video.